let's go for it.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks, Chris, for taking the time to get interviewed. I really appreciate it. I think you're a very intriguing person. I know you a little bit, but this will give me some time to get to know you a little better, so I appreciate it. Also, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and if there's any question where you're thinking like, I'm not so sure, I feel comfortable answering it, that's no problem. Like, just say that, and we'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
Because I want to be as comfortable for you as possible. So I guess to start, if you could just share with me one of the most exciting things that you've done in your life.
The first thing that comes to mind is I climbed to the very top of the Great Wall of China. So it's the highest point in the Great Wall of China. And when you think of a wall, you think of this very kind of flat thing that just goes along an easy flat surface. But it actually goes up into the mountains in some of the areas of China. And there's a highest point that it hits. As a photographer, I have a photo where I'm standing at the top and I'm looking down, and it's one of my favorite photos. So as a photographer, it stands out as one of my crowning photographic achievements. I got really lucky that the day was very cloudy and foggy, and there was a nice mist rolling over these mountains, and then you have this winding staircase that just goes down into the mountains and just completely disappears in the shot. And it's just that event. I had traveled the circumference of China for over a month, so I spent a month basically backpacking around China, and that is like the pinnacle of that moment. Right. And it just always stands out in my mind.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And what brought you to China? Was there something that was in particular that was drawing you there?
It was an art trip, actually. Oh, okay. Something through college, so It was something that came about an opportunity. I got to go with a couple of one of my best friends who's my muse. I think of him as my muse in art, in the art world. I bounce off ideas from him. We're totally different artists who see the world completely differently, which is what makes us
That's
work.
Interesting. So your muse has a little bit of a different take on art than you do. How would you say that your views about art are different?
He's very conceptual. So he's aesthetically conceptual. He really appeals to the conceptual art background, the philosophies. He really loves to kind of get involved in that and look at a work of art that to most people wouldn't really inspire any thoughts. They would just be like, it's just a red dot, or it's just this thing. I don't see anything. And he's always like, no, it's a story about our society and how we put people in these labels, and it's a story about humanity and whatnot. And I was never a conceptual artist. I want my art to be aesthetically pleasing. Right. So I was more of coming at it from the aesthetic end, and he comes at it from the conceptual end. To me, I like to surround myself with people who see the world differently than I do.
That's interesting.
My wife and I went to Portland on our honeymoon, and it's beautiful. I love it. Everybody, I feel like I'm surrounded by people who are like me, and it scares the crap out of me.
So you like to put yourself in situations
where you're
with people who have different beliefs, values, and you feel that kind of stretches you, or?
I think you need I think that the energy forces in the world require movement. I like to think of myself as a progressive person. I like to be moving. I like to be changing. I've kind of embraced change as the only constant in my life, and I think that if there's no difference of opinions, or there's not conflicting, opposing forces, there's no movement. It's boring.
Very interesting. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and ask you about the world, and if you could snap your fingers and make one problem, one issue in the world go away, what do you think would be what would you do?
Oh my, one wish. There are so many important issues.
Yeah.
As a vegan, as someone who lives a lifestyle based on what I think is an issue with food, and just diet and how we get that food and the environmental impacts that leads to, I want to go there, but I feel like so much of our issues stem from our lack of equality or equity in the world. And I often say that there's bridges, and empathy to me is the most important bridge to solving probably a variety of issues. So if I could make one change, it would be, and I don't know how to word it, but that everybody would to make everybody feel a greater sense of empathy towards all other people in the world. And I think that would just be able to hit a whole bunch of other areas.
Do you feel that as choosing to be a photography teacher and art teacher, that art plays a role in helping, like, your students have a greater sense of empathy for
Absolutely.
others?
I think art is about learning how to see the world differently, or learning how to communicate your view of the world. And I think even in that, if you're just in the art to communicate your view, you're establishing a relationship, a connection with the audience that you didn't have before. And I think even if you mean it to be a one-way, it always ends up coming back to you in critique or responses to your work.
2 questions. What do you find that you appreciate the most about teaching here, and what do you find to be the most challenging thing about teaching here? You can take that in either direction first, the challenging and then the appreciation, or the...
I actually think they're the same thing.
Okay.
I think what's really great about this community is the parental involvement that leads to student success. I think that is the one thing that stands apart from other schools, maybe, that leads to success here. I also think it's the biggest, it's handcuffs to the culture here as well. So I think that in a lot of ways our success and our community involvement can limit progression, limit change. And as I said before, I really think that embracing change is important. The world is always changing, and I'm not so sure DHS is adaptive enough. And I think sometimes it's that success and that community, that culture, that pushes against change.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. You've got that connection between feeling sometimes like this place, this community or school is a little bit too static. And that kind of connects with your philosophy about yourself always looking for new perspectives to help change, so you're not in one place.
It's very safe.
Yeah.
It's very safe. It's a safe community.
Right.
It's very safe here. And, for better or for worse, we have to put ourselves outside of our comfort boxes in order to become better human beings, in order to grow. And that requires taking chances and taking risks and failing. And I think failure is such an important part.
Because I struggle in terms of discussions that we're having in English class or with writing to get students to take chances and to say things that maybe they're not sure if they're going to be right or not. And I'm always looking, have you thought about ways to help students with their artwork to take that chance and that risk to maybe be wrong and maybe to fail, but to be okay with that? Do you remember a particular assignment or student or something who kind of had that growth and how that happened?
I absolutely am always trying to get students to embrace that level of learning. It's one of my targets.
Mm-hmm.
It's under creativity target I have, takes risks, is recognizes failure as an opportunity to learn. The big project that we do, the expressive painting and drawing project, it's about embracing failure as the opportunity. It's about, we have asserting and obliterating. Asserting is when you make marks. Obliterating is when you literally destroy it.
Right.
So taking white paint and covering up your work.
Right.
So, but when you do that, there's still that layer there.
Mm-hmm.
When you paint the white paint over, it doesn't go completely away. It's still hidden in the background,
Right.
and those layers are what really end up making the piece successful. is that the viewer can see into the piece and see all the marks behind it that aren't meant to be in the foreground. And they learn from those as they're kind of building up.
Your muse would be happy because that sounds very conceptual.
He would, yeah.
Okay, so last question. Story about your name, Chris Sikora. Like, it's kind of an interesting name. Do you remember like anything, maybe a story about your last name, where it comes from, maybe a story about even from when someone noticed your name and asked you some questions about it? Anything that relates to just your name, and it's
Sure.
yeah, that would be
Well, Sikora is a Czechoslovakian, of Czechoslovakian heritage. I'm only about maybe not even a quarter Czech, but then my dad's side, it's more prominent. My mom was 100% Italian, so that really filtered a lot of that Czechoslovakian heritage out of my blood. But it's a hockey name. So it's a name that hockey players have had. So it's something that people recognize. If I say Sikora, they'll be like, oh, the hockey player. And I played a lot of hockey growing up. So it had, it helped. I think it helped me make a connection to the sport. I felt more accepted, or what's the word? Supported in my decision to play hockey, because there was a hockey player with that last name. It's really weird that something like that would happen.
But it was in your blood.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah.
And then I always, one of the jokes about my first name is that my mom swears that no one was naming their kid Christopher when I was born. And there's tons and tons and tons of Christophers. It is far from an original name, so it's kind of a joke that, I swear, there was no one naming it. Before the internet, how did you really know?
Right.
Maybe
So she saw it as a very unique name.
Yeah.
Like Christopher,
Yeah.
but you see
And
it
I'm
as
like, that
there's
is not an original name.
Excellent. Okay. Well, great. Thanks for taking the time
Yeah, thank you.
for the interview. It was great to sit down and learn more about you. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Yeah.
Awesome. Basically, we start usually by just taking a practice shot. So just do one shot,
Okay.
and then we can come and look at the image and say, how did it turn out? I know you got double shots there, so the first one without the light, and that's with the light. So one of the first things I notice is,
I did a double shot because it
You
was
know,
too long.
we have kind of like side lighting over here, we have a highlight coming in over here, the background is very bright,
Right.
and I kind of like that.
Right.
But if I want an even shot, maybe I'm going to light up this side a little bit more.
Okay.
So I'm going to increase the light on this side.
Okay.
But other than that, everything else seemed to come together pretty well.
Yeah.
So let's do another.
I need to press set.
If you just go back
Oh,
to
okay.
the shutter trigger,
Okay. So,
it'll just automatically.
Okay.
And then we can take a look at that. It's weird that it's like this
Okay.
one's not shooting at the same time, but that's fine. So I'm going to move it in a little bit closer. So let's get these in closer. And let's try that again.